Good morning, everyone. And just to reiterate Massimo's comment there, thank you all very much for coming and listening. It's a pleasure that I have in my job to come out to regions and talk to people and give the opportunity to present what Informatica does. And thank you very much, Comtas, for hosting this event. It's a pleasure to be here. So, as Massimo said, I have gone too far forward. I'm going to talk about maximizing the return on your data. Like Massimo, the term big data is being used all over the place, and there is no such thing as big data. So I'm going to bring this a little bit down more locally, because big data, really, we're managing it today. It's either high volume, large quantity, large items, or massive amounts at high speed. And largely we have to prepare ourselves for the changing landscape that we have in the industry that we're working on in order to prepare ourselves for the different types of data and the different pace of data that we're having to manage. So really for me, we've moved into an era where data is the most valuable asset a company has. Once upon a time, we would like to have thought it was our people, the staff of the organization. And sadly, we're in a period now where the staff are replaceable, but the data isn't. The data, the information that a company has, is the intellectual property that company has that keeps it afloat. And there are so many examples of disasters around the world where companies have gone under when a disaster happens and they lose the ability to access their critical assets, their data. So we're going to look at what we mean by maximizing the return on data. A couple of key topics that I'm going to talk about is the evolution of Informatica's value proposition to its customer base. What are we doing to deliver you more value out of our technology? There are some mega trends, as they're referred to. We are in the eye of the perfect storm in our industry. Never before has there been so many big influencing changes in industry that are all coming together at the same time. And I'm going to talk about these influences. And again, how can you prepare yourself for what is coming down the line? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the rise of big data, but very small amount I'm going to talk about that. And then I'm going to look at what's coming or what is out in 9.5 that again is preparing you and giving more functionality and capability to you for the services you're having to manage. Let's look at this, what we mean by maximizing the return on data. And this is a very simple concept. There's not rocket science behind it, and we try and put this into a formula. And what we're trying to say is the value of your data is measured in two ways. One, what value that data delivers to you, the services that you get out of that data, the use of that data to your business, and secondly, the cost of that data to you. How much does it actually cost you to manage that asset that you've got, to make it available, to hold it, to retain it, to secure it, to protect it? All of the things you have to do to look after that data is the cost. So to us, the return on data is the value of that data to your business divided by the cost of that data to your business. And we are all under enormous pressure on the cost. It's quite easy to measure the cost of data because most IT organizations have an operating margin to work within, and invariably we're in a climate where most organizations are under pressure to reduce the cost of their IT. So they're looking at ways to innovate, to automate in order to drive down the cost. So you can measure that one quite easily. It's a lot more difficult to actually measure the value of data. And really, the value of data only comes when you can monetize the impact of that data to your business imperatives. How do you link the cost or the value of that data to a business driver that your organization is going through? And only when you link it to a business driver can you truly actually start to understand what the value of that data is to your organization. And really, Informatica is looking at ways in which you can improve this value, whether that be timely access to that data. So you've got all of the data at your fingertips when you need it. Whether it be to manage the process of mergers and acquisitions, so you onboard an organization quickly. Whether you give a holistic view of your data, whether you have a complete customer view of your information or your product assets that you're working with. How do you actually get that value out of the data that you're managing? And equally at the same time, how do you lower the cost? This real estate that we've got down the bottom here of many, many different systems that you're managing, these silos of data that you have in your organization. And now we're facing, not only do these silos exist inside your organization, but they are also coming to you from outside of your organization, either in the simplistic way of business-to-business interactions that we're doing, or the shift to sort of cloud innovation and cloud initiatives where we're seeing data move outside of our organization. And fundamentally, these two areas are where we can actually get the return on the value of data. Let's look at some real examples before we move on in terms of what are we doing specifically to these. But let's look at some examples of some of the customers that have actually got the value of their data and understood how they put a monetary value on their data and what impact it has on their business. Let's just pick one or two of these. Let's have a look at Merrill Lynch, for example. Merrill Lynch, they increased the productivity of their financial advisors by 10%. Now, if you think about that, okay, 10% doesn't sound a lot, but they've got 15,000 financial advisors. Imagine what you would do with an extra 150 people in your organization. That's a massive saving when you look at it like that. How did they do this? Okay, these people are like call center people. One of the most common key sequences in a call center's employees' use is Alt-Tab, because they're flicking between many different applications that they're using in order to deal with their customers. So they're looking for information about their customer from many, many different applications. What Merrill Lynch did, using Informatica technology, is integrate that information together and present it to their financial advisors in a way that gives them a consolidated view of all the instruments that their customers had. And by doing this, it gave them 10% productivity benefit to their employees. Massive saving when you think of it in that way. Health Now, another example. Health Now do clinical trials. And what they put in place was a centralized, effectively a customer data management. Their clinical trials are outsourced to thousands of laboratories around the world. What they did is, by having a centralized view of their products, of their clinical agents, they were actually able to reduce the cost of development of drugs by 67%. This is real bottom line value from their data that they're getting out of their data. And lastly, let's look at ING as just another example. ING are, like many financial organizations, or many organizations around the world, are wrestling with regulatory requirements. The regulatory requirement in particular that ING were wrestling with was data privacy. In how do they ensure that their sensitive customer data is only viewable or accessible by people that have the authority to view that data. And not only the record, but also elements of that record. Because I, as a user of that data, may have the right to view certain elements of the data, but another person may have rights to view different elements of the data. What ING put in place is a data masking technology, real-time dynamic data masking, so that they could mask out fields of that data dependent on the user profile that was accessing the data. And in this way, they were able to meet the regulatory requirement. Equally, as they moved that data around into test systems, they were able to mask that data as it went into the test system. And these are things that we're doing with our test data management types of technology. So these are examples of where customers are getting real value from their data, increasing the use that they put to their data. Let's look at a couple of examples where people are actually reducing the cost of managing their data. Just pick a couple here, like Direct Edge, for example. Direct Edge increased the performance of their hardware infrastructure by 50% by putting a new message bus layer into their organization that got better utilization and performance out of their existing investment. So they got 50% return on investment on their hardware by getting much better performance out of the investment that they'd made. That either allowed them to invest in more technology or defer the acquisition of more hardware in order to meet the performance requirements. So they drove the cost of their infrastructure down. Another example is Lloyd's. Lloyd's, like many financial and actually many organizations, are going through many mergers and acquisitions. And this is something that the industry, all of our industries, will continue to do for many years to come. Lloyd's were faced with increasing cost of managing legacy data. So what they chose to do is actually archive off 400 legacy applications with lifecycle management in order to reduce the cost of their infrastructure and the maintenance of that legacy information. Got rid of it and shut down applications throughout the world, thus reducing their infrastructure cost. So these are two very tangible examples of how you increase the value of your data, how you decrease the cost of managing that data. How does Informatica help you here? Okay, fundamentally, we're very used to the on-premise technology that we're all looking after. The large ELTP, CRM applications that we've got, all this on-premise information. We also have to deal with the fact that, like it or not, cloud technology is coming and it will exist around the world as people embrace the agile capability that the cloud has. So data is actually starting to move out into the cloud as well. We're constantly dealing with partner data, whether it be financial instruments as we do clearing data at the end of the day, whether it be health records, whatever the type of data is that we're using for business-to-business interaction or interchange of information, or simply managing the partner ecosystem that we have out there. There's more data that we have to integrate, and most of this data is unstructured data as opposed to the traditional relational database or the structured data that we're used to managing. And then, of course, there's a whole different type of data. There's the social data that people are starting to have to look after, starting to look at how can we get monetary value out of all this asset that we have in the social data. What I would propose to you, the one takeaway I would have for you is whenever you're investing in a departmental data integration requirement or a strategic investment, think about putting in place a data integration layer in your organization, abstraction layer from the complexity of the infrastructure underneath you, so that you have a layer of services that you can deliver application information or data to any application that you've got. What Informatica proposes is you put a layer of data integration into your organization that has universal connectivity to any source of that data, wherever it may be, the ability to deliver that data either in batch or real-time requirement with things like the ultra messaging capability. So you can access it anywhere, you can access it and deliver it at the performance that your business needs it. You can access it and deliver it from both on-premise and off-premise. You can also look at the holistic view of that data, not only managing it while it's actually needed for current business requirements, but how do you manage the life cycle of that data so you can retire that data, or that you're not looking after, you're clogging up your online systems with data that people generally are not accessing, that's over 3 years old or 5 years old, that you can afford to archive off and get out of the way and therefore release the energy that's in your infrastructure to continue to deliver the services. Or within the ILM, how do you do test data management? How do you mask that data and make sure it's available to your community? How do you provide data steward tools to the business so that you in IT are not responsible for the data quality? You provide the tools to the business. But if you don't know the context of that data, how can you possibly be the one that actually looks after and manages the integrity of that data? And how do you master that data? And ultimately, how do you look at correlation of activities that happen in your infrastructure to give you event management of complex data? So all of these things go together to give you a data integration platform. And I urge you to think about whether it's Informatica or anybody else's technology to prepare yourself for the future, for the dynamic nature of the business that you work in and the pace that your business works in, or the new technologies that are coming down the line. You need to prepare yourself to deal with the pace of change that is ever increasing. And the only way to do this is make sure you've got an abstraction layer that you can plug anything into that layer and access your data, whether it be virtual access or direct access, that you mask the complexity of the underlying infrastructure. Use your tactical projects to fuel your direction in a strategic data integration platform. This is the value that Informatica can provide to you. We have this platform of technology. We only do data integration. Everything we do is about providing you this platform. Let's look at some of the things that are influencing the change in our space here. there are three, as I mentioned, there are three mega trends, and that's a bit of a marketing thing, and I'm a technician at heart, so I have a bit of a problem with marketing phrases. But if you look back in history, there's never been a point where there's been such an inflection point of architecture change that we've got now. Okay, we went from mainframe to client server. We went in the 80s to relational databases. But these were single point activities. They didn't all converge at the same time. What we're seeing at the moment are three huge changes in the IT landscape that are happening at the same time. We've got cloud computing happening. We've got the big social computing activity happening, and we've got a shift in mobile computing. And what this fundamentally means is that where computing happens is shifting from what we're starting to see our compute capability shifting off-premise. Now, I appreciate that depending on where we are in the world, the momentum of this technology varies, and I understand certainly in Turkey that the adoption of cloud services is relatively slow at the moment, but you can't ignore this. It will happen because you can't stop your business users utilizing cloud services, because in many organizations this is happening completely transparent of the IT organization. We're seeing business users subscribe to cloud services without IT even knowing that it's happening. They have this level of power. The only thing you can do is prepare yourself that this will happen and embrace it, because you can't stop it. The other thing is what the data is that we're working with. At the moment, largely we work with transactional data, whether it be in relational databases, whether it be business-to-business record, but it's all based around a transaction, something that happens that we're going to manage. What we're moving towards is interactional data, relationship communication. This is what's really driving the whole social network. And at the moment, we might think, okay, social is just for private use. But I'll show you in some examples where this is absolutely not the case. People are starting to monetize, get value out of social data. And then, of course, how we access our data is also shifting significantly. It's not going to be long before, prediction from Sega, we will see the laptop disappear, where the tablet PC is almost powerful enough that I don't need to carry my laptop around anymore. My data will exist in the cloud or in some virtual service hosted on-premise, but I won't need the flexibility and power that my laptop has because I can get it from my mobile device. So what impact does this have on us in terms of managing data? Well, fundamentally, the quantity of transactional data is increasing, where the cost of actually managing transactional data as it moves into the cloud, into the flexibility of the cloud, is increasing the amount of transactional data that we're working with and where that data exists. The quantity of moving from transactional to interactional. The volume of data in the interactional space is massively greater than we have ever seen in our traditional transactional space. It's a different type of data. We're looking at location-based data, geometric data that we're looking at here. This is largely a lot more machine-orientated data, which is very, very high volume data at a very, very high pace. And this is why people start to talk about the concept of big data. But fundamentally, it is massive amounts of data, small packet data that we've got to manage. And then we have to prepare ourselves for the different way in which people are consuming data. The applications that are being developed now are largely for mobile users. Informatica itself is developing things like our master data management interface is available on an iPad. So that as an IT person, you've got that capability of managing your infrastructure wherever you are remotely. But more importantly, as providers of data, we have to provide data in a way that is consumable by mobile devices and applications that are created in order to consume that data and generate that data. So the landscape is changing. There is no avoiding this. We have to embrace it. We have to put this layer in to protect ourselves against this change. Let's have a little bit of a look at some of the impact of what's happening here. Cloud computing, we're seeing all of these applications shift into the cloud. And You know, Salesforce is probably the most common one where people are going for customer relationship management, sales tools, etc. But Informatica is a relatively small company. We have 24 core business applications that are now hosted in the cloud. And largely the reason for doing this is the agility you get from doing this. It's not necessarily the cost saving. People are actually starting to see that if I provision a server in the cloud and I keep that server for a year or multiple years, actually the cost of that server is actually more than it costs me if I provision it on premise. But the benefit I get is the agility that it gives me. I can spin up servers very fast in the cloud. I can use it as an infrastructure. So even if I'm not making cloud services available to my business user, as a provider of infrastructure, I get the ability to spin services up very, very quickly. I only pay for what I use. So it's a very cost effective if it's if I'm moving, my infrastructure is flexing on me. So we can't avoid this. How does Informatica help you in this space? Well, it prepares you for what's going to happen. We have great on-premise technology, but we're starting to see a delivery of off-premise capability. We have cloud connectors to most of the dominant cloud applications. We have very good web service interfaces that integrate with all of the cloud service applications. What this means is as you start to see your data move off-premise, you can continue to control that data because you can connect to it, you can synchronize with it. You can have data quality rules that exist that you can share with cloud-based applications. You can also actually provision Informatica as a cloud service. So you can do data integration in the cloud. So if you've got a department that wants to have a very rapid integration requirement, you can use cloud services to do it. Your data doesn't move in the cloud, so it's secure, but the management, the transformation of that data, the data quality rules that you use can all exist in the cloud. So you can take advantage of this cost-effective dynamic platform. So we give you this ability to manage your data on-premise and off-premise. So again, we prepare you for the future that you're going to have to face. Social computing. We're used to dealing with transactional data. As I mentioned before, this is the type of data we deal with day in, day out. Our businesses run on this. We put a lot of effort into business intelligence of transactional data. However, the market is starting to look at the impact on our brand of social data. Even if you just consider social data to be a personal, private thing, it can damage your brand. Many enterprise organizations constantly monitor what's going out on Twitter, on Facebook, to pick up on their company name so that they can react to it and see, because you can very quickly damage a brand by the social communication that happens around that brand. You can either make that brand really successful or you can kill it. If you remember back to when Apple released iPhone 4 and they had this connectivity problem, they tried to hide that from the industry, but they couldn't hide it, because the communication that was going on Facebook and Twitter made it a public issue they had to face. All organizations are facing this now. So even if you only look at this from a point of it could affect your brand, then it's important to be able to integrate to that social media. On the other hand, can you embrace what's out there? Can you market to people via social media? Can you put applications in place that actually do loyalty programs? So a perfect example of this is a major retailer in America that we were all familiar with, high street retailer, clothes store. They have looked at how do they use social media in a way to give brand loyalty to their customers. So what they've done is they've created a Facebook app where their customers actually sign up to that Facebook app. They put their personal preferences, their clothes sizes and things of that nature, and they get a personal shopper assistant assigned to them via the Facebook app. So they can ask for advice and color matches and things of this nature that you would get from a personal shopper when you go in the store. You can have this in the virtual community. You can also, they've linked it to their point of sale system, so that when you go and buy something, it gets updated into your profile, into your Facebook profile for this particular app, so you can see everything that you've purchased. But not only that, your friends can see what you've purchased. You can see your friends' purchases. So you can see when a friend's birthday is coming up. You can look at the sort of things that your friend has bought, so you can understand the sorts of things that they like. And you can buy something from the store from their friends. Their friends can post things that they would like to have, or things they're interested in. That way you can get cross-reference the things that you would like to buy your friend. It also gives them the ability to have their customer base vote on the sorts of things that they want in store. All of these things are done by creating a master data hub in the cloud, so that they can see the products that their customers are buying, they can see relationships between their customers, so that they can see that actually the biggest marketing benefit they have is when a loyal customer recommends their product to a friend. And this is where they get the greatest value from this type of technology. This is the power you can start to get out of social media when you start to look at how can you use it to cross-sell, upsell, understand your customers. How can Informatica help you here? We have loads of connectivity to these cloud applications. We can ingest this data. We can do context-aware searching and data quality into this data. We can create master data hubs that do the relationship management for you of your customers in the social space. So we can give you the ability to ingest that data into your existing infrastructure, put it into your data warehouse architecture, so you've got the relationship there. You can get sentiment analysis from the cloud data using tools that are available to you by integrating that data into your infrastructure. So you can start to embrace this wave that is coming upon us, where social data is no longer just a private thing that we do, but it becomes a business asset to us as well. Mobile computing. Mobile computing has been, I mean, we've been on this wave for a considerable amount of time, but it is continuing to accelerate as we see 4G capability coming along. The need to actually carry my data around with me is almost gone. I mean, one of the main reasons why I carry my laptop is because I want my 0.5 terabyte of storage at my fingertips. Well, now that I'm going to get 4G capability and the access to that data is so fast, do I really need it? I don't actually care. In fact, I'd like my data to be hosted somewhere, because then it's backed up and protected for me. But equally, my PA can get access to all of my data. At the moment, all the things I create on my laptop. My PA can't see them, so I can't get her to run reports for me or update some of my data for me. But if I could put it in the cloud and we can both get access to it in a secure way, actually that's real benefit to me. So once I can get my data off my machine, my iPad is actually quite performant for me, certainly when I travel. Actually, I don't need my laptop. I get better applications on my iPad than I'm ever going to get on my laptop, because there's a whole world out there of developers that are developing neat apps for me that, you know, I can do so much more on my mobile device than I could ever do on my laptop. So frankly, I'd like to move to my laptop. And this is going to happen to us. We are seeing these traditional devices. Typically they're used 6 hours a day. These devices are used, I mean, if you talk to my niece and nephew, who constantly twittering and texting, they're never detached from their devices. They're constantly on these devices. And the generation of new employees that are coming through, this is their world. It's not this world that we currently live in. We've got to get used to embracing this. If we don't, it'll pass us by. Again, Informatica providing you the platform for managing this data. This is where you start to see, again, this concept of big data. The quantity of data out here is also machine orientated. It's location services. So not only can I do contextual marketing, so that I could market to somebody based on their preferences and what websites they're going to, but now I can do location-based marketing if I know where they are. Not only that, we're actually seeing, again, the world we're living in with regulatory requirements. We're seeing people like the police and government organisations wanting to be able to track where people are. Now, we may not like that, but the reality is it's happening to us. We can't avoid it. So people are actually wrestling with the quantity of data that they're actually having to look after here. It is exploding, this type of data, and it's a different format data that we're having to look after. Again, put a platform in, it prepares you and makes you ready for what's coming down the line. Do forgive me, I just need a mouthful of water and I didn't bring my water up. Okay, let's take a little bit of a look at what people mean by big data. Because there is such a phenomenon of big data, but it's not, you can't go and buy a big data, or you can't buy a solution. All these people that are talking about, we've got a solution for you, need this for your big data. You don't, you can't. You won't be able to buy one thing that fixes your big data. It is a shift in, we all know about Moore's law, the incrementals of data. That Moore's law needs rewriting because the data explosion is taking over now. The question we have is, are we ready to manage this high volume, high throughput, large item data in our infrastructure? Because you can't avoid this. If you're struggling to deal with traditional on-premise transaction-based data today, you can't get your arms around single customer view, the quality of your data, the profiling, the delivery of your data today, watch out, because it's going to get much harder. Gartner reckon that only 85% of organizations will be able to really truly get value out of the fact that they're having to deal with big data. And simply, this is because they're not agile enough or capable to embrace and manage the quantity of data that they've got to look after. What do we mean by big data? Well, there are three areas where we're seeing a massive increase in the quantity of data. Still, there's a huge increase in the transactional-based data. The traditional on-premise data that we're all wrestling with on a daily basis, the fact that it's easier to spin up applications, that people can consume cloud-based applications now, is increasing the amount of transactional data we're going to have to look after. It's increasing the complexity of looking after that data, because if I've got to do data management, data protection of data that's on-premise, I've still got to apply those rules to the fact that that data is off-premise. So somehow we've got to embrace the fact that this is going to happen. So we're going to see a massive increase in transactional data. We're also going to see a big increase in this interactional data as we try and actually deal with the interaction information that is available to us. And then the other phenomenon is the machine-based data. I'm not sure if people saw recently in the press, I think this week, in Australia, they have now, they've just turned on and gone live with the biggest telescope network in the world. It's on one premise, massive number of telescopes all working together. Their actual intention is to link not only this site, but multiple sites around the world of this data that they're achieving from this telescope network. They estimate that in 1 year it will produce more data that exists in the internet today. They don't know how they're going to manage this data. There isn't a computer, there isn't technology today that is going to manage this data. But it's like when the Americans decided to put a man on the moon, they knew they would have to actually develop new technology in order to do that. They know that in order to actually process the data they're getting, they will have to develop new technology to do it. And this high-scale, high-compute network that we're starting to see with things like Hadoop is one step in that direction. But even if you bring it more to reality, the things that we're dealing with, the mobile data, the amount of machine data that we're having to manage in order to continually provide additional services to our customer is driving this change in platform architecture. Whether you call it big data or whether you just call it a new type of data, there is a new platform architecture that we're having to support here in order to support these different types of data. Where's the value or the importance of this to the customer? In the transactional space, big pressure on analytics. We're looking at data coming from many different locations, and how do we actually bring that data together in order to analyze it and get business intelligence capability. We're starting to see the move into real-time analytics. Not only do I want a data warehouse where it's largely looking at historical data, okay, that historical data may be last night's batch file, we're now starting to look at, I need real-time analytics. I need to be able to react to things that are happening all over my business, from data feeds from all over my organization in real time. So this analytics of this traditional transactional is increasingly important. In the big data, the transactional, the interactional data, the social data, clearly one of the things I want to do is relate people together. I want to be able to see the relationships that people have with each other, because that's where I can get the real monetary value. If I can see that my friends of networks, you know, I'm various things that I'm into, I'm going to influence my friends in that same direction. So if I can see, if as a marketeer I can see my network of friends, then I can actually probably deduce that I could market to them similar things that they know about me. And probably they'll have a pretty good hit rate. So I want to do relationship management. I also want to do correlation. I actually want to look at events that happen in the cloud that tell me something about somebody. Now this may probably be for security purposes, but I actually can start to use this data that's in the cloud to actually determine, did Mark Seeger use a credit card in Turkey yesterday? Why was he there? And I can actually start to get that from all sorts of different information that exists out here. And obviously in the space of the big data, or the high volume machine data, I need to be able to process that in a timely, efficient way. Which leads us nicely into 9.5. These big mega trends, the cloud computing, the social computing, the mobile computing, that are driving this thing that people call big data, or just a lot of stuff that we've got to manage. 9.5 is all geared around looking after this, preparing you for having an agile architecture to manage your infrastructure. So let's take a look at some of the things that we're doing in 9.5 that is dedicated to these three big influencing factors that we're dealing with. And even if you're just dealing with a departmental requirement, you've got a new data warehouse that you've got to spin up. 9.5 is delivering you increased capability in that. And do think, although this is a departmental project, how can I benefit my business from the things that I'm doing in this departmental requirement that can be reused? So in my data warehouse, for instance, where I'm profiling data and I'm cleansing data and I'm putting data quality rules in, how can I make those rules available to other parts of the business so that they can use it in transaction processing or the point of entry system? How can I reuse that? So if I think in the mindset of, I want to get to the point where I have a platform for data integration, then everything I do tactically, I can use to get me to that platform, and ultimately get you to the point where you're prepared for the future. Transactional data processing. Fundamentally, the biggest thing about this is universal access. You can't control the applications that you're going to connect to or going to have to connect to. You may have a corporate standard for your database, for your financial applications. As best as you try, you can't enforce that. Because before you know where you are, the company you work for will acquire another organization, and they'll have a different technology. And you may invest a huge amount of energy in moving them onto your corporate standard, but you'll never finish that job because it will always evolve. There'll always be new technology that you want to embrace. The critical thing is, can you connect to it all? Can you have universal connectivity? Fundamentally, Informatica continues to strive to deliver you this connectivity. We have no agenda in this space. Our goal is to give you universal access. We don't have a preference. We're not trying to sell a database. We're not trying to sell a relationship management system. We want you to have the connectivity. So we're not locking you into some application-driven engine that is driving the data integration. Data discovery. You still need basic profile discovery capabilities. We've made these tools available to business users so they're much simpler to use, so that you can get more intelligent information from the business user as to how you're going to build up your architecture and your infrastructure. It prepares you also for any migration projects. You've got to know where you are before you start on any journey. Otherwise, you're never going to get to the finishing point because you started from the wrong place. Discovery is all about this. Equally, we've made a big stride into Data Steward, into allowing the business users, the analysts and the data stewards to actually manage their own data. So we may have IT create initial mappings, initial data quality rules that we can publish and make available to the business users. Those rules are obviously used to automate a lot of the ingesting or the management of data. But when you have an exception to that rule, it's not IT that need to deal with it, it's actually the business. So our interfaces for a lot of our data quality and cleansing technologies are actually now much more business friendly. Event-driven, queuing capability so that the business user can actually process and provide feedback, and equally even the business user can actually start to write their own mapping rules or work with the IT in order to re-engineer those rules so that they're constantly evolved. But equally, they're reusable. Once you write a rule for a piece of data or a rule or data quality rule in your organization, that can be ingested into any application. It's now made available as a service that you can plug in. You don't necessarily need the whole engine in order to run that data quality service. So you get a lot of reusability and again, drive cost down of your applications. Universal data replication. The ability to replicate your data to any endpoint that actually needs that data and synchronize it. So very sophisticated replication technology that we've acquired and added to our portfolio so that you can make sure the data is in the right place. Big interactional data. What are we doing in this space to actually embrace what's coming in 9.5 to embrace interactional data? Again, access. Many tools to access these social applications and interrogate information that exists out on the ether that people are putting out and communicating about. Natural language parsing is new in 9.5. So I can actually process chunks of text and pull information and quality out of that text. So by doing that, it allows me to understand, that by the way is Chris Borman, but I think it's a very old photo that's, I don't even think it's flattering, but anyway, he's our CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. With natural language parsing, I can actually pull a lot of intelligence about people. So if I want to do marketing campaigns, I can actually understand a lot more by text that I can find about that individual in the world around us. So this probably comes out of his LinkedIn profile. Well, from his LinkedIn profile, I can understand where he's worked. I can understand bodies that he's worked on. If I looked at his Facebook profile, I'd probably be able to understand things that he's interested in. I can build all this intelligence because we can actually plug into all of these engines to actually give you the capability of bringing this information into your traditional warehouses and your marketing tools in order to actually utilize this information. This is the ability to what we refer to as of. So what was the state of a record or the information I had of a person at a particular point in time? So we added this into our master data management capability so that not only do I have the master record of today, but I can actually go back in time and say, okay, this person has clearly got married. I want to know what the status was previously. So that this could be organizational data that I want to know. If I'm doing a reorganization of my business, I would want to look what was the shape of my business last year for decisions that I want to make. I want to know things about the community around me. I want to know what was the situation previously. So we manage all of this data so that you can see historical, you can see trending types of capability from this as well. Not to mention the lineage capability we have with things like metadata management, so you can see how these changes have happened as well, so that you can ensure compliance or you can understand how you've got to the current state of your record. Relationship as well. Some of you will be familiar with our identity resolution technology. This has been bolted into a lot of our other technology so that we can actually see the relationship between people. A very common requirement that we're seeing in the industry today as a result of mergers and acquisitions is very typical of the telecom market, where they've acquired multiple organizations. It might be mobile organizations or fixed line or broadband services or television services. I actually want to know what services my customers have got. Chances are I've got this held in multiple systems. It isn't realistic to be able to merge those systems together at the pace that I would like to be able to cross-sell and market to those people. I need to show shareholder return on acquisitions much, much faster then we have the ability to integrate and merge those infrastructures. As a result of things like relationship management across disparate systems, I can actually start to see household relationships. I can actually start to see products that different people in that house have actually got. So I now know how to market. From a slightly more government perspective, I want to actually see what benefits, for instance, that are going into a particular house for benefit fraud. In the UK, for example, there's a massive initiative called Universal Credits that look at all the social benefits that people have. Well, there's a huge amount of fraud goes on this, where people are registering multiple times at the same house for the same benefits. This sort of relationship management and identity resolution, the same person registered multiple times in the same house. Or for things like Border Patrol, being able to identify people. This relationship and identity management is critical to those sorts of applications. In the space of the machine data, as I mentioned, the satellite project, all of these devices are generating huge volumes of small records. And this is probably one of the areas where this concept of big data comes from, being able to manage all this different data. And so we've advanced things like data streaming capabilities with ultra messaging technology so that you can actually stream this data at a much higher pace and be able to at least absorb it or reduce the cost of your infrastructure to manage that data. Complex event processing of this type of data. Mentioned earlier, there's a lot of government organisations that are very interested in what people are doing. They want to be able to make a relationship between a group of people they're following. It might be a known terrorist, it might be political activists, it could be fraudulent people, people that are trafficking goods that aren't allowed. Most organisations have a list of these people. What they want to be able to do is they want to be able to follow those people around the world in various different activities that they may perform. So whether they turn up in a particular location, particularly if it's a drug trafficker, for example, being able to follow that individual could well give you a pattern for, there's a common route that people take for sources of drugs and the route that they take. By being able to follow people, you can see whether there's a potential alert. Being able to look at their monetary transactions and link this information together gives you the ability to actually do very complex processing. We have technology that is key for linking events together against business rules that you create that allow you to do intelligent analysis of events, whether it be for fraud, whether it be for border patrol, whether it be for intelligent marketing. Being able to link these events together in order to give you this view. Just conscious of time. Finally, in the space of Hadoop, one of the big drivers for the need for vast volumes of data is this machine data. The challenge that we've got with this machine data is a different format of data. The traditional applications that we've been used to working with, the relational database type applications, do not lend themselves well to the sheer volume of data that this machine data type information is coming from. It's also a different type of data. It's very small packet data, very vast quantity of data, needs incredible processing capability. Hadoop architecture. How many people are aware of Hadoop? One or two. Okay. You don't need to know a great deal about Hadoop at this moment in time because it really is an emerging technology for new data types that are being managed. But one thing you do need to be aware of is it's a completely different architecture. There is a totally new file system underneath it. It's incredibly parallel. It's runs on top of a shared infrastructure, so you really truly get scalable architecture where multiple low-cost component blade-type technology can be linked together to create you a mesh architecture for putting this file system on top of it. It's got a completely new programming language for actually accessing data and the types of data, querying that data, referencing, searching, relationship of that data, for accessing that data on top of this file system. So it is a complete shift of compute capability that we can see today. Truly scalable architecture. Multiple processor across physical nodes. The thing about this is that now you're going to end up with data in another silo. And yet, as a business, you are still going to need to be able to either ingest data from your transactional environment into this, or actually manage data that's in this into your transactional data. You want to be able to do business analysis of this data for different requirements. I might want to look at my peak load throughput of certain switches in my infrastructure. This is the type of data that comes through onto this environment. I may want to follow somebody. This is the type of information that comes through here. What Informatica has done is provide, you're familiar with our power exchange, our universal connectivity. We've provided connectivity to this new architecture so that we can move data in and out of this fundamentally new platform. We've been able to replicate and synchronize data into there. We've been able to do parsing of data into there. There's something referred to as HParser capability, which is in this Hadoop architecture, they create massive log files of small records that need an incredible amount of compute power in order to process those log files. You also want information out of those log files. There's very valuable information in there that you want in your traditional data warehouse or your business decision-making system. We have technology in the same way that we use our business-to-business complex data management tools. We use the same in this space as well. Although not relevant necessarily to you today, it will happen to you. You need to prepare yourself for it. This is why Informatica is so passionate about this layer of data integration. You may not need these capabilities today, but you know by investing in this abstraction layer, you will be able to plug in to whatever happens to you down the road. And again, really driving towards the return on data. You are all under enormous pressure, either to deliver services faster or more appropriately to your business users or your subscribers, or provide information to your customers. And you're equally under huge pressure to reduce the cost of doing that. In some form or other, you will almost certainly be asked to reduce some form of cost. By putting this layer of data integration in, you prepare yourself for the future. You prepare yourself for being able to be agile for whatever happens. You don't have to have a big bang, massive investment, although we would like you to do that. But you can use your tactical projects, thinking about what you need for the future, to invest in technology that protects you against the future. Use those tactical projects to invest and give yourselves the steps along the journey to get you to where you need to be, to prepare yourself for what's going to happen in the future. As I mentioned, maximize the return on your data. Be conscious of these 3 big mega trends that are going to happen in the industry. You may not be using cloud technology today, but I can assure you, you will be. You cannot avoid it, because you're not in control of what your business users are doing. They will use these services. Rise in this thing, big data. There's going to be a massive explosion of data. We know it. We've just got to be ready for it. And capabilities in 9.5 to help you get there. I shall be around all day. Do please ask any questions. There's many Informatica people here. We'll take any questions and help you as much as we can with your business drivers. So thank you very much.